Hey guys, you can now support this show and make your life 50% better by going to patreon.com/thesystemisdown and signing up for the Downers Club, where you're going to get access to a plethora of wild, crazy, and often offensive bonus audio and video episodes of the show on a weekly basis. For more information, just go to patreon.com/thesystemisdown. The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Well, welcome back to another fantastic episode of the least comfortable show on the web. You know what it is. It's The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics, all the things that trigger you, all the things that get your panties in a wad and make you shout and lash out irrationally for the topics that we address. That's what we're here to do. Things like conspiracies, politics, and religion. And if you're new here, welcome to the show. I think you're either going to really enjoy it or you're going to really be triggered by it, because today's episode is no exception to that rule. We are talking about witchcraft and occultism with a witch, an occultist witch. And I know we've got a lot of conspiracy-minded people and religious people who are going to look at this and see it as playing with fire, or call me a shill and say that I'm working for, quote, the other team now, or whatever. But the whole point of this show is to discuss topics of uncomfortable nature, have civil conversations with people that we disagree with, and just see how they came to the conclusions that they've come to in their life. I mean, that is the primary objective of this show, so if you have a problem with that, please go find another much more comfortable show that you can listen to on this Monday morning during your commute to work. But my conversation here with occultist witch Lailoken Scathach was a fantastic one. He was a very kind and civil individual, and he had a different background than I. He walked a different walk and came to different conclusions, and as I always say, that's what this show is about. It's all about seeing other people as humans and not enemies, and listening to why they think the way they do. So we're going to get into that conversation about witchcraft here in just a moment. Before we do, I got to remind you guys about the Downers Club. If you would like to support this show, keep the lights on, keep it getting bigger and better, more beautiful every single week, you can do so, and also get a bunch of bonus audio and video content every single week by going to patreon.com/thesystemisdown and joining the Downers Club for as little as a cup of coffee a month. So go check that out. That is what is making this show better every week. I don't know if you've noticed, but it is. It's better every week. And I got to give a big shout out to our latest patrons to sign up. We've got Brian McWilliams, we've got Jerry and Crystal Lane, and we've got Trenton Campbell. They've all signed up at the $5 level in the Downers Club. So, guys, thank you so much for your support, and welcome to the Downers Club. It is an absolute pleasure to have you. I also got to give a shout-out to our sponsors, the 29 Toes podcast, which is a completely different podcast than this, but great guys who, it's basically three guys sitting around talking about guy stuff like sports and video games and movies and all sorts of guy stuff, just drinking and having your typical bar chats. It's a really chill environment, and probably a good way for you to cleanse your palate after you are too triggered from listening to The System is Down. So go check out the 29 Toes podcast wherever podcasts are sold. Now let's get into this conversation that I had about witchcraft with a witch, and my intent with this episode was to talk for 45 minutes to an hour in the main episode, and then maybe do 20 to 30 minutes of bonus content. It didn't go that way because the conversation I was just enjoying it that much, so we ended up talking for multiple hours, almost 3 hours, I believe, and if it feels like this episode cuts off in the middle of the conversation, that's only because this episode cuts off in the middle of the conversation. I'm spreading this out over 2 different episodes, so this one will cut off, and then it will pick right back up where it left off next Monday morning on the main episode. So all that said, and without further ado, here is my wonderful conversation with occultist witch Lailoken Scathach, a.k.a. Hellbound Heathen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get weird. My guest today is correct me if I'm getting this incorrectly, but occultist, Gardnerian witch, and YouTube debunker of all things, Lailoken Scathach. I believe that's correct. You just told me a couple of minutes ago, but Ken, we'll call you Ken for now. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. And oh shit, I'm so sorry. How do you like to be addressed?
Dan is fine.
Dan is fine? Okay.
Yep.
All right, Dan. Well, thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you reached out to me too, and you were civil.
Absolutely.
That's always a plus.
Yeah, that's what this show is all about, and I'm sure I'll get some pushback for even having you on here, but I have no problem with associating with people of different backgrounds and beliefs because we're all in life together and trying to figure out, what the hell this is. So I wanted to have you on because, given your title, it's pretty apparent why I wanted to have you on. We have very differing beliefs. You are, as you describe yourself, an occultist Gardnerian witch, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
Let's just start from the beginning. I'd like to dig into your background, your upbringing briefly, just to kind of see where you came from and what brought you to these beliefs that you have now.
Oh wow. Okay. So let's see. We have to go back to grade school because I was always kind of like the awkward kid. I never really fed in with any group, and I wasn't really with the jocks. I wasn't really with the heavy metal guys. I was just kind of like on my own. I was a little bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
And so to be quite honest, I didn't enjoy school. I hated it. I didn't like dealing with all the little social interactions, the politics and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I did the bare minimum just to get by in school. And I used to cut school and I'd go to the library and I'd read books on mythology. So I'd read books about Greek mythology and Roman mythology, and I loved it. And then I came across Celtic mythology. And for those of you who might not know, Celtic mythology is kind of a loosely, it's better to be calling it like Irish mythology and Welsh mythology and British mythology. But I started reading about this and I started hearing about these ancient gods that were pre-Christian gods. And it really fascinated me, and I really got interested in finding out more about that. Then I found out about the Druids and who the Druids were, and they were like the priestly caste again. That was a pre-Christian tradition, and they were nobility. They were people who passed laws, wrote laws, so they knew how to read and write in their language at the time. They went to school for a very long time. They studied. They did divination. They were kind of like the intellectuals of their time.
Sure. And
it just really fascinated me, and I wanted to find out more. But unfortunately, you get to a certain point in history, and it's all gone. There's no record of what they actually believed and how they practiced, and all these things. So that put me onto a road of kind of reconstructing the past, reconstructing my connection with my ancestry, if you will. There's probably a lot of reasons why I was wiped out. One of them may have been that the church felt threatened by them. It could be that it just died out in favor of other things. Like if everybody in your community is worshiping the God and Jesus and all that, then you play along, Sure. And so the stories about these ancient gods just turned into folklore and mythology, and that's what we have today. We have a little bit of archaeological evidence, a little bit of history, a little bit of linguistic information. Most of it is secondhand information. For example, Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, a lot of information there. Tacitus, Cicero, even the Greeks. The Greeks gave the Keltoids the name, the Celts. They gave the name for our one of the main Celtic gods, Cernunnos, which means the horned one. And you maybe have seen pictures of him, but he has antlers and he's holding a snake and a torque in one hand. Sure. I can get you pictures if you want later. But so I started reading about this, and I just felt a connection that I never felt before with my past and my ancestry and my blood, and it just really, for some reason, it just really resonated with me, and it put a spark in me that made me want to find out more about this. And before then, my concept of a deity was kind of nebulous, I didn't exactly believe in a Christian God. I believed in some kind of a being, maybe, that controlled the universe.
Were you raised religious at all, like in your family?
Not really, no.
Okay.
We were Unitarian. My mother, later on, towards the end of her life, she became a devout Catholic again. She was raised Catholic.
Sure.
And then, so we didn't really have any religion growing up. So maybe I was looking for some kind of, maybe I was looking for something. Maybe I needed that.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to kind of define and find my own belief system. And actually, that's what I've done. And it's there's like-minded people who have similar beliefs to my own, but for the most part, especially occultism, paganism, they're very individual paths, meaning that you put it together how you feel comfortable and how you see it. There's no dogma. There's no thou shalt not do this or thou shalt do that. It's very much just kind of put it together for yourself. And in doing that, you take responsibility for your own actions. You take responsibility for your own beliefs. You take responsibility for everything. So if I do anything, it's not Satan in the background telling me to do it. It's me actually doing it. Yeah. It is my action. And I pay the consequences for my actions, as do all of us. So I think that kind of sums up how I came to believe what I believe.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I should have prefaced with this at the very beginning, but this is not going to be a debate. I'm not going to, try and proselytize here or anything.
Well, if you want to, you can. I mean, hopefully you won't proselytize, but
sure.
But you can ask me questions, challenge me, whatever you want to do.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm mostly here. My main interest in this show is exploring other people's backgrounds and why they believe differently and how they came to their conclusions. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious, and like I told you before we started recording, I'm sure that I don't have a huge Wiccan listener base or anything like that. So I think it's good for everybody to educate themselves on other beliefs and figure out why they believe what they believe in every aspect. So yeah. So that's how you came to believe how you do. Can you explain, what exactly it is you believe, and not really entirely sure where to start because there's a lot to dig into here.
That's the thing. I mean, it's not really. I have beliefs that I can kind of like lay out onto the table and pick them up and explain them to you.
Sure.
I'm looking for an understanding. I'm looking for, like most people, I think we're trying to understand maybe where our place is in the world, meaning to life, what happens after we die,
right?
Is there a soul? All these questions that have been around since the dawn of time, since man looked up to the stars and wondered, like, what is out there? Why are we here? When we see death and we see disease and we see famine, like what causes that and how is it there? And, we created all these beliefs around it, and it's just life. There's no external conscious forces behind all of these things. It's us doing it. When we go to war, it's human beings going to war. There's no battle of good and evil behind that. It's man doing that. And it's the same thing with beliefs. People have different beliefs. People have different opinions about things, and I'm happy to have other people around me that have different beliefs. I don't have to have everyone believe the way that I do. Yeah. My beliefs are not contingent upon you accepting my beliefs or even verifying my beliefs or even, not having my beliefs. They're just...
Yeah, and I always say, what is, the truth that is, does not change based on what you believe anyway, so it doesn't... Right. It doesn't really change a whole lot if we disagree on things, because we could both be completely wrong.
Yeah, because there's objective truth and there's subjective truth. Objective truth is, it's either it is true or it's not true. It's binary. Objective truth, you can kind of talk about that, and If it's not a binary truth, like it's definitely, it does exist or it doesn't exist, and it's subjective. And subjective is where the realm of religion falls into. It's subjective beliefs. I don't think anyone can sit here and say for a definitive, absolute 100% certainty that, for example, the god Lu or Zeus or Jupiter or Yahweh actually exist. If they can, then they've got a gold mine in front of them. So all of our beliefs are subjective, and I understand that. My beliefs are subjective also, and I have to recognize that. And you're absolutely right. There is an objective truth, and I don't think we've discovered it yet.
Yeah. So do you believe, you said no outside forces controlling or dictating what you do or don't do. Do you believe in any sort of spirits or God or the devil or anything like that?
No. I think that whatever happens after life, I don't know what it is. There's a lot of various theories people have. There's heaven, there's hell, there's reincarnation. Maybe we're reincarnated on another planet, another galaxy. I mean, who knows? I mean, you could sit there and speculate all you want about what happens after we die.
Maybe the Scientologists just nailed it on the head. Maybe they've got it figured out.
Yes, L. Ron Hubbard was really onto something when he created his fake religion.
I sincerely hope that's not the case, but so
well, you do know the history. Well, maybe one day we'll have to talk about the history.
Yeah, I have dug into it a bit, and I am looking for somebody to discuss that with. So
you should probably talk to a Scientologist, though.
I'm looking for one. If you know anybody, send them my way.
All right, I'll do
that. So do you consider witchcraft or the stuff that you believe, do you consider it a religion, or like what category does that even fall under?
I see. Yeah. So that is not an easy answer. So the idea of witchcraft, the idea that people consort with the devil and have familiars and do all these things and cast spells and, all these things, that really comes out of like the Middle Ages, around the 14th century. It was pretty much a Christian concept. People who worked forces and were in league with the devil, and then obviously they had the Inquisitions, and they had people who were accused of being witches who were burned at the stake, hung in gallows. This happened over a good 300-year period. So it's not like it happened for like half a month or a year or something. No, it happened for about 300 years. So this idea of there being evil out in the world is not new.
Sure.
But then you get to a point of who's evil, right? And who's good. So obviously the good person is the person who's in church. Those are the good people, right? Those are the people who believe the same thing you do. Those are the ones who don't go against the grain. They follow along. They don't ask questions. They're just good, they're good churchgoers, and that's what they do. And then you have the people who, maybe they grumble or rumble or question, or maybe they don't go to church or whatever. And those people can fall into that category of, well, how much of a Christian are they? And, then accusations can come across, and they get accused of being a witch or in league with the devil or whatever, and they were ostracized. They were tortured. They were stripped naked. Whatever they saw in their body was proof of them being a witch. It was called a witch mark. If you had a mole, a discoloration, anything on your body, that would be proof that you were a witch. Right. You were basically tortured until you confessed and said, I am a witch and I've been in league with the devil. And then you concoct all these other stories. And then as a reward, you suffer and you die because of that. There was no way, if you were accused
either suffer until you either suffer and live because they think you're a witch, or it's the whole put them in the water. If they drown, then they're not a witch. If they float, then they are a witch. You have to kill them. So
exactly right.
Lose.
Exactly. So that's what happened. So a lot of the people, probably 99.9% of the people who died during this period were Christians. There were Christians who believed in God. They probably lived, they lived their life in concordance with what they believed in the Bible, and they were innocent people. But because they were accused of being this with no other evidence whatsoever than just the accusation. These people died. They were burnt alive. They were hung. And they also had to name other names. They had to, because you couldn't be a witch alone. And so they made up these fantastic ideas of babies being killed, blood being drank, there being a Sabbath that they went to. They flew there on brooms, and all of this stuff is just, medieval superstition that came about. Now, it may have been based upon pre-Christian beliefs that may have carried on throughout the ages, before the 14th century. Because, for example, they found flying ointments, which give you the sensation of flying. So you would fly to the Sabbath. And this was a topical salve that you put on the body, and it was made with pig's fat and henbane and belladonna and all these psychotropic drugs. So you would rub them onto your body, and it would give you the sensation. It was a drug. It was a sensation of flying. So this may have been
something.
High,
right?
Huh?
But they were just getting high, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, they were getting high. But it was probably part of maybe some kind of an initiation ceremony, or somehow this information passed down the ages and stayed with the people up until that point. So after that point, I don't know if there was actually a quote-unquote witch cult that survived since that, or even survived till today. That's another thing that's up for debate. So you get people, sorry, I'm bouncing around a lot.
Oh, you're fine.
But you get people today that actually believe that there is an actual witch lineage that goes back. And that's where you get various different traditions of witchcraft. The one that I practice and I identify with is called Gardnerian witchcraft. And it was started by a gentleman named Gerald Gardner in 1939. He claims to have been initiated into the New Forest Coven, which supposedly goes back. Now, there's a couple of really good authors. Philip Heselton is one of them, who has researched this New Forest Coven. And he believes that he has a couple of members maybe going back a generation or so, but that's about as far as it goes back. There's a lot of physical evidence of people cursing people, people doing things to try and heal themselves of blindness or sickness or gout, or to make themselves more fertile, or to attract love, or all these various things. And they found these things in Cornwall. And there's a great museum in now the name's escaping me, in Cornwall, Boscastle, Cornwall. And they have a lot of these trinkets and things from back in 1800s, 1700s that they have records of. So people were still practicing. Maybe they weren't practicing exactly witchcraft, but they were practicing some kind of sympathetic magic, believing that if you do this action, you're going to cause that action to happen in reality by sympathetic magic. And so this was the concept of, for example, if you put a pin into the heart of someone, supposedly that's supposed to cause that person to, have a heart attack or whatever.
Sure.
So that's what sympathetic magic is. It's this idea that you do one thing, and when you do that, it happens to somebody. It can be for a good effect, or it can be for a bad effect. So that element of witchcraft has been there. Now, because I study a lot of pagan beliefs, a lot of pagan religions, I identify my particular my tongue is tied.
You're fine.
My particular path is I follow more of a Wiccan path, which is more of a witch religion path.
Sure.
And so we practice, we celebrate, the 4 fire festivals, which is if you look at the witch's wheel, what they call it, you have Samhain, which is November 1st, then you have Imbolc, which is February 1st, then you have Beltane, which is May 1st, and then you have Lughnasadh, which is on August 1st, and then back to November 1st. So that was the wheel of the year, and those were the 4 major fire festivals. And these fire festivals go back to Gallic times, again, the ancient Celtic peoples in Gaul. And there's even there's linguistic evidence of the names Samonios, which corresponds to modern day Samhain in the Irish language, which is what we celebrate coming November 1st, which is coming up very soon. Yeah. And then later on, at some point, Gerald Gardner and his friends decided to tack on 4 more celebrations, and those are the solstices and the equinoxes. So that's how we have the eight festivals that are typically known. And then people also gave them names. For example, they gave a name of March 21st, which is the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, the name of Ostara, and then the June solstice, which is the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, was given the name of what did they call it? Shoot, because I don't call them by these names. I just call them the summer solstice. Yeah, I think it was Litha. And then again,
you could totally make it up, and I would believe you. So it's
right, exactly. I could see. I called it, Fruit Loops.
That's right.
But it's in the September equinox again in the northern hemisphere. Was Maven was a name that was given by somebody, and then the December 21st winter solstice in the northern hemisphere again was called Yule, which is actually the name of a month in the the northern tribes. The name's escaping me right now. The Icelandic people. So that's how we get the eight festivals and what we call those. And each one of those is a various celebration of life. And if you look at that wheel, it's essentially the life cycle of a human being. You're born, you grow, maybe you meet someone, you get married, you have a child, you grow older, and then you die. So, for example, Samhain would be the time of the passing. When you pass, that would be the end of your life. Imbolc is basically kind of like you're in the belly, you are being born. Beltane, it's the time of fertility. It's where you meet someone, you have a family. Lunasa is kind of like the adulthood, the time of growing into an adult where you're no longer kind of a kid. You're now sort of responsible for everything, and then that's the end of that's the other part of your cycle. Is you then go and you come to that point where you're going to pass again. You're going to pass away, and supposedly the cycle all begins again. And that's really what Samhain is about. It's about it's about facing that fear of death. And facing the unknown. That's what really Halloween is. Halloween became the Catholic celebration of this time of year to celebrate all the saints, because the pre-Christian peoples were remembering their ancestors around this time and telling stories around the fire and doing divination and telling ghost stories and kind of, especially the kids, just kind of, it was a day for them to, because they're the young ones, they don't understand that how life works, and eventually that they have to face these various fears of seeing people around them die and wondering what that's about. Right. So it's kind of a way of giving this information to kids so that they can understand and face these fears and just learn about it. So each one of our fire festivals represents a certain time, a certain part of our life, and they're mythological cycles too. Especially in a lot of witchcraft traditions, there's a lot of it's a cult of what's the word I'm looking for? It's experience. It's not like you're explained what happens. It's kind of like you experience it for yourself, and you find it's a mystery tradition. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
So it's a mystery tradition. So it's not like I tell you, this is what you're going to experience. This is what life is going to be like. It's like it's for you to find out what it is, and you find out a deeper understanding of it. And maybe you kind of have a concept of what happens after we die, or what happens, like if there's a veil between this world and the other world where spirits are, and so that's kind of really at the heart of what definitely the witchcraft tradition is. It's very much a mystery cult.
Gotcha. And on these days of like these festivals and things like that, is it something that is like celebrated? Do you do rituals, or like what occurs on these dates to make them significant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so various covens. So a coven is a group of individuals who share a common bond. Maybe their tradition or their path, or maybe they just come together to celebrate the Sabbats as they so desire. But yeah, so each celebration, each one of those celebrations will be celebrated by people differently. But definitely in my tradition, we remember those who have passed on. So my mother, my father, my grandparents, people like that, I would remember on this day and honor them. I would tell stories. Another part that a lot of people don't really discuss, and because it doesn't really make it into books, but a lot of the things that the Celts did around this time was they settled debts. So if you had a debt with somebody, you settle it around this time. So let's say you racked up X amount of money with the local pub or the local store or whatever. You want to be sure to pay off that debt before before November 1st, the new year.
Not one of the more sexy traditions that make it into like the Disney lore or anything like that.
Exactly. It doesn't have anything to do with a knife or blood. So, sure. One of those more mundane type of activities. But It was believed that if you went fresh into the new year, it was considered to be good luck. And so that debt can be like maybe even holding on to ill will with other people in your past, or whatever. It was just a way to kind of shed off the old year and get into a new year. You could kind of think of it like our New Year's today, January 1st, Maybe you make a New Year's resolution, or you just want to start like a fresh because you got a fresh new year ahead of you, fresh you, all this positive outlook. And that was kind of what this time was about too. Gotcha. And so yeah, and each festival there was a feast involved, and so you'd get together, you'd have people around, family, friends. Like in a coven, you have your coven mates around you, and you would have a ritual, and you would celebrate, and you would feast, and then afterwards you just kind of talk about whatever and just hang out and be together. It's like a social gathering, just like anything else. Like if you went to a club, or if you went to a church, it's like you have your service, you interact with the people, and you have your own your social network that you hang out with, and then you all go home and live your lives.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay. So are you personally part of a coven right now, and like what's the process for like being involved in one of these covens?
Yeah, I've been in a couple of covens throughout my life. The most recent one I was in, we ended up parting ways. Sometimes that just happens with various groups.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody's really interested in finding out more about witchcraft, I suggest this to people. Do some search within yourself. Find out what you believe. Maybe read some books. Spend some time contemplating what you think about life and the outlook of life and your own, just your own opinion about things, and kind of come to an understanding of what it is that you believe to begin with. And then go out and find a belief system that you feel corresponds to your belief. So if I had a student and they seem to be going in the direction of, like, let's say they want to become a fundamentalist Christian, maybe I'd be disappointed. But if that's their true calling, then please, I'm not going to stop them. That's their path. If that's what they want, then I encourage them. I say, well, then do it, pursue it, find out more about that. And that if that's something that really appeals to you, no hard feelings. I hope you'll stay in touch and we'll be friends. But if that's your path, then so be it. And it's the same way with somebody if they want to become a witch. Maybe they want to become initiated into a particular tradition. Then that's their choice. But it's got to be absolutely free will. There's I don't want to influence people one way or the other. I want them to find their true happiness. And if their true happiness is not my true happiness, who am I to interfere with that?
Right. Yeah. And Gerald Gardner I watched a documentary on him recently, and he said that when he was initiated into his coven or whatever, he was stripped naked and there were all these rituals and stuff like that. I mean, is that pretty common? Is it like what is portrayed in the media, where these horrifying acts of naked people dancing in the woods and, sacrificing chickens or whatever?
That sounds like Santeria, but
I don't know.
That's okay. Sorry, I understand. Well, that's that. Did you see the Britain's Wicca Man? Was it the one by BBC? I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Philip Heselton was in that one. He was the white guy. Not the white guy. He was the guy with the white beard.
Yeah, I believe that was one.
And there was another guy. Yeah, that was actually a really, really well done documentary on Wicca. So to answer your question, every tradition has a different way of doing initiation. Initiation is something that it's a mystery tradition. So you go through this experience, and that's your experience. And you just don't talk about that. Because that's your experience. Sure. If you are looking for a coven, you might want to ask them, like, do you practice skyclad, which is what we call being naked. This was something that I think was more in common with, like, maybe the 60s and the 70s. Nowadays, I think the majority of covens, people are going to be clothed, so they're going to be wearing clothes. But that skyclad tradition was kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's still covens, there's still groups that practice it to today. But it's one of those traditions that I think personally, and I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I feel I think it's kind of falling out of use. One of the things is, I mean, even though most covens, like the groups I was in, we practice indoors, there are groups that practice outdoors, and you can't get naked out in the public. Maybe you could do it in your own backyard, or someplace that was kind of like maybe, isolated. But for the most part, to have the police come along as you're around a bonfire and you're all naked is kind of an embarrassing situation.
Not ideal, no.
You have to have a bonfire because otherwise you could be freezing your off.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're warm, so you can have a bonfire. Bonfire is going to be seen by a lot of people. So, well,
that's how it always happens in the movies. You see the giant bonfire in the woods, and then as you get closer, you see the naked people dancing around it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so I have a friend of mine on YouTube who he's seen that movie, I think, and he always bugs me about the naked witches.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a running gag that we have. And I'm like, if you wanted to join a 1970s coven, you'll probably find naked witches. But for the
Sure.
most part, most people, they just arrive in like maybe a robe, but for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, street clothes, and maybe just something
Gotcha.
that they feel comfortable in.
Right. Now, does your personal experience, like, do you practice like spells, incantations, curses, stuff like that, or not?
I do if needed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, you know, something's not going my way, and so I cast a spell on it.
Sure.
If I did that, I would be casting spells all the time. But
Cursing the toilet for not running right.
right, exactly. Curse you, toilet. You know. And so, for example, there were a couple of times where I have cast spells, but there was an intention behind it. So, for example, I was moving, and I had an idea of where I wanted to live, what I wanted to look like, and so I worked a spell for that, and I got the place. It was exactly what I wanted. I wanted a window that was facing east, had a view, and it happened that way. And then I've done other things for like a job, you know, and there's a very common thing that we say in various coven groups. The most magical thing you can do is, if you want a job, is to go out, get a resume, and put resume out there and look for a
Right.
job.
Right.
That's the most magical spell you can do.
Yeah.
So spells should be something that it gives you that little edge. It's we could get into this. This is a good time for this. There's various levels of magic. Again, this is what I teach. This is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There's psychological magic, which is your own psychological makeup. You can think of this as, for example, if you're an athlete, let's say you are a runner, maybe you play basketball, you're an archer, swimmer, whatever. You have to put yourself in a zone to do that. If you're going to win against these other people who run for a living, that these are professional people, they're not just amateurs, they're professionals. If you want to win, you want to beat them, you have to put yourself in a psychological mindset where you're focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is winning, or doing that, or hitting this or hitting that, and all these. Your mind has to be singly focused. Same thing with boxing, martial arts, whatever. Your mind has to be focused. So in that respect, like, let's say if you do a spell to get a job, and you want to be confident, you want to make a good impression on the other people, you want to leave those interviewers going, that's the person we want to hire for that job. So this is something that you would incorporate into your spell. And by working the spell, maybe psychological triggers or whatever, but you're going to go into this interview confident. You're going to go into exuding that this is the person that they need to hire. You're going to go in with that. And so it's going to give you a leg up on that. And so that's psychological magic. Then you can have, which is kind of like glamour. It's kind of like tricks, kind of like it's illusion. Sure. And that's where what you do is you can kind of manipulate people's perceptions of you. Like, for example, you could stand next to a very expensive Lamborghini car or whatever and get a picture taken of it, put it up on Facebook, not say anything about it, but people might assume that that's your car, even though it's not your car. So that type of magic is another way where you can kind of manipulate and sort of fuck with people. Sure. And then there's the other magic where it is your will, which Aleister Crowley defined as you are causing change to occur in conformity with your own will. So this is something that you would want to happen. Like, let's say maybe you want to get love into your life, or you want to find money, or you want something to happen in reality. You want something to actually manifest in reality. Now, nothing is going to pop into existence out of nowhere. You're not going to wiggle your nose. You're not going to wave a wand and something's going to into existence. It's just not going to happen that way. It's going to happen, but it has to take a chain. It has to take a path of reality. You know, it has to conform to certain aspects of reality. And this stuff that I'm talking right now, you can talk to 100 people who believe the same thing that I believe, and they're all going to have a different opinion about this. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
This is how I perceive it.
This is not the one witch to rule them all. Your word is not is not gold.
Exactly. I am not the face of
Sure.
everyone who believes in magic.
Right.
But so that's how I perceive that. And sometimes, unfortunately, magic doesn't have a time constraint. So these things can happen, and they will eventually happen. It just takes an awful long time. Well, sometimes it takes a long time. If you put time constraints on it, it definitely does help. Mm-hmm. I have a funny story about this that I can share. On my channel, I had a tutorial that I did on sigil magic. Sigil magic is something where you essentially take a thought or a concept you have, and you break it down into a single element or single symbol or single character. Mm-hmm. And that single character represents this whole concept idea. And so it's something you can kind of like, you can put up and you can focus on it every so often and just, kind of remember, okay, this is what I want to happen. And you can keep it on your person. And that's kind of what a sigil is for. It's kind of like to be able to focus your energy on something. So I did this tutorial for people, and it was made up. It was made up in the sense that I wanted to get $5,000 in 30 days. And so I created, okay, if you wanted to create a sigil to get $5,000 within 30 days, this is how you would do it. And I did the steps and walked people through it in a video. I didn't really think anything of it because I wasn't being serious. It's not something I thought was actually going to happen. Yeah. And I was just kind of like doing it just for fun, really, just to show people how to do it. But I got contacted by somebody because I was looking for work, and they wanted to send me some money to get set up. Now this was a scam, mind you. This was a scam. So they sent me a check for $5,000. I took it to a bank and I said, "Is this real?" They looked at it and they said, "No, this is not real. This is fake." So what they sent me was this check. I was supposed to buy supplies, and I don't know exactly how it was supposed to work, but somehow they were going to end up taking more money from me.
Right.
But I didn't think about it because it happened probably about a little more than 30 days after I had done that sigil video. And I didn't think about it afterwards until later. I go, shit, I wanted to get $5,000, but I wasn't serious about it, and it was kind of fake, and so I got $5,000
and it wasn't serious about you. That's great.
And it wasn't exactly $5,000. It was like $4,700 something, very close to $5,000.
Sure, yeah, it's very interesting. And this magic that you're talking about of like manifesting over time, it's not that much different than like Christians believe in prayer, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if you speak it into existence, like not even just Christians, even atheists, a lot of them believe in like the power of words and speaking things into existence and believing it and then it coming true. Is there any difference between these things?
Yes, there is a difference. One thing I should clarify also and go back to is because I know you're a skeptic, right?
On what you're saying? Or on everything?
Skeptic just
either
in
way,
general.
yes.
I don't think you're like skeptic on like only 20% of this.
Sure. No, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I have to be skeptical too. And I have to understand that there's a bias on my part. There's a part of, I have to recognize that I can see things where maybe it's just a coincidence. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you think something and you do something and it's a coincidence that just works out for you, so you have to be skeptical of that. Mm-hmm. So, you have to be truthful. You have to, you have to be skeptical about these things. Sometimes you do magic for something and it doesn't happen,
Right.
But anyhow, to answer your main question there, yes. So when I am working my will for something, I'm willing it. That is, I'm not going through. So, for example, I'm not a polytheist, but at the time I was a polytheist.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't going through, for example, Lu or Zeus or Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't going through God. I was willing it. This is what I want to happen. This is what I'm going to will to happen, and I go in and I do the spell and I do that. So that is a direct connection. It's not an intermediary. I'm not going through someone else. I'm not like talking to Jupiter and saying, hey, Jupiter, I really want this. Would you be so nice as to give it to me?
Sure.
And that's kind of what a prayer is, in my opinion. What you're doing is like if you're sitting there and you're saying, you know, God, please, I want my son to be healed of whatever, or, you know, whatever it is, God, you know, your will be done. You know, I'm sure I don't pray. I'm not a Christian, so I'm just assuming that this is how they do it by, you know, movies I've seen and stuff like this.
Spot on. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're asking God, and maybe they put something on the end like, hey, you know, I mean, but if it's your will, or you know, and so that's what they're doing. But you're going through an intermediary. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's the same thing, because you want something to happen, and so you're doing something to cause that to happen in mm-hmm. reality. Like you want your son to be healed of whatever it is, but you're praying to God for it to happen. And maybe the occultist or the witch would work a spell to, you know, to get their son healed, you know. Mm-hmm. However, we would also caution and say, well, yes, let's hope that your son gets better, but in the meantime, have you seen a specialist? You know, you want to come back down to earth. Right. Occultism has a lot of philosophy to it, and if anybody's interested in finding out more about this, I highly recommend the 3 books of occult philosophy by Cornelius Agrippa. Occultism has a lot of philosophy in it. One of the philosophies is you know, the various elements. You have earth, fire, air, water. Each one of those elements, earth has kind of like a grounding aspect. Air is kind of like, you know, you're airy-fairy. Water is just kind of like more emotional, more reactive. And mm-hmm. fire can be like you have a quick temper. You're just going to act and you're not going to think about your actions. Mm-hmm. So you want to keep all of those elements within yourself in check. You want to stay grounded. You still kind of want to be a little imaginative and creative. You sort of want to be a little emotional. And you want to have that fiery energy to, if necessary, to get through a bad situation. So you want to keep all those things in check. So that's one thing. Yes, you want to work magic for something, but you want to stay grounded in reality and think like, well, if I want a job, I'm going to have to actually get my ass out there and put in resumes. You know, if I want to be healed of something like cancer or my, you know, or my son, I want my son to be better. I need to seek out professionals. I need to actually take them to a professional and have them diagnosed and their treatment. And then, pray for them and give them my support. Mm-hmm. So, yes, you have to kind of keep everything in balance and in check.
Okay, gotcha. So what is kind of the ultimate goal for this religion? Like, I mean, in Christianity, you've got, well, depending on who you talk to, you've got heaven and hell, and you're trying to, you know, figure out the afterlife and get into the shiny golden gates. Is there, I mean, do you believe in any kind of afterlife, or what is like the ultimate goal for what you believe?
I go back and forth between believing in reincarnation and not believing in reincarnation. Sure. So this is something that I've thought about for a very long time. You know, for example, I'm 51 years old now. I got into studying witchcraft when I was 13 years old. So this is one of those questions that I've often thought about. I don't believe in spirits because I've been in a lot of circles. I've experienced a lot of various things. People have said that there's been spirits, and I haven't experienced them.
Sure.
I've never communicated with any entity through a Ouija board. And it kind of goes against the concept of a heaven or the concept of reincarnation. Because if you have spirits, why aren't they reincarnating, or why aren't they going to heaven?
Sure.
So that's, that's one of the big questions for me. If I don't really have evidence for it, then I dismiss it. I dismiss that belief. So I've dismissed that belief of spirits. Now the afterlife is, I mean, you can have theories about it, you can have ideas, but you and I won't know until, well, it's too late.
I agree.
But if somebody believes in heaven, or they believe in reincarnation, I'm not going to poo-poo that. I'm not going to sit there and say, "Oh, you're a fucking idiot. Why you believe that?" If you believe in heaven and you're not going around hurting people, I don't care. Believe all you want.
Yeah.
The one thing that for myself, the one rule that I follow is, and it harm none, do what you will. And that's it. If I'm not going around hurting people, then that's it. I've had a good day,
Sure.
And it's the same thing. If you believe in heaven, but you're not going around forcing your will upon other people or hurting them, then it doesn't matter. Same thing with reincarnation. If you believe in reincarnation and you're not hurting anybody, then that's all good on you. But I don't have a definitive answer for that, because it's still in that category of I don't know.
Right.
And it's taken me a long time to accept I don't know. And I think everybody may have to come to grips with that somehow. But sometimes there's stuff where I just don't know, and I have to leave it at that.
Yeah. Absolutely, that goes for everybody. I agree with that. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end and hopefully not getting too triggered. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I did enjoy it greatly. I enjoyed the whole conversation, this week's and next week's, and the bonus so very much. So, if you disagree with some of the stuff, if you think I've gone too far, you can let me know. Doesn't mean I'm going to change anything, but you can let me know. You're welcome to. If you think I've become, some sort of Satanist shill, I'm sure some of you do, you can let me know. I'm open to your scrutiny. By all means, you can, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment in the comments section down below, or you can go join the System is Down forum at tsidpod.com/forum, where you can interact with myself and a whole bunch of other weirdos who have a plethora of varying beliefs and are able to have these civil, uncomfortable conversations about disagreements. So go check that out, tsidpod.com/forum. And be sure to tune in to the Anti-News live broadcast tonight, where Craig and I cover everything that's going on in the world, and do so with a lovely dark comedic twist. We do that at 9 o'clock on Monday nights, Central Standard Time. The easiest way to find that show is to go to TSIDpod. Nope, not TSIDpod. Go to antinewslive.com, and it will be the first video on there. That will be the latest and greatest that will be premiering tonight. So check that out, antinewslive.com. And again, please go join the Downers Club, patreon.com/The System Is Down. You'll get a bunch of bonus audio and video content every single week, including my extended conversation with Lailoken Scathach. That will be coming out next week after the wrap-up of this conversation premieres Monday morning. So, patreon.com/The System Is Down. Join the Downers Club for as little as a cup of coffee a month, and your life will be 50% better. I guarantee it. And while you're out there in the world this week, talk to somebody you don't know. Talk to them about something you don't know about, and they do, and listen to them, even if it scares you or makes you uncomfortable. That is probably the meaning of life. We're all trying to figure out this shit together, and let's be honest, none of us really have a clue. We might be on to something here or there, but none of us really know exactly what we're doing here. So let's all figure it out together. I mean, own up to your convictions. I'm not saying change your mind. I'm not saying become an occultist witch, obviously, but if you think that it's dangerous to talk to somebody like Ken, then that's a problem, because he as you can see, he wasn't trying to convert me to anything. He wasn't trying to commit me to the Church of Satan or something, or whatever you guys are going to be screaming in the YouTube comments, undoubtedly. He was just a good guy, a really good guy and a fun guy to talk to. So go talk to somebody that knows more than you on a topic that you are uncomfortable with. And also, like, share, subscribe, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the things. Do the things that millennials do. Do all this stuff. And I'll be back here first thing in your ears next Monday morning with the uncomfortable conclusion to my conversation with Ken, Lailoken, Scathach, first thing next Monday morning. So, if you'll have me, I'll be back. Sound good? Same time? Same station? More Witchcraft. All right. But all that said, thank you guys so much for listening and keeping an open mind. I appreciate you guys and your civility and your willingness to support this show so much more than I could ever possibly say. I love you from the bottom of my cold black heart. And so until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, please question everything and stand comfortable. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.